So today we're talking about the benefits or not benefits of getting a creative writing degree. I would say there are just as many pros as there are cons, just like with anything in life. So honestly, I wouldn't say you have to get one, but I also wouldn't say if you don't get one, everything's going to fall apart. like, it's not one or the other. I would say it really does depend on where you want to go and what you want to do. And by the way, when I finish this lesson, if you'd like to ask me any other questions that are unrelated to the lesson, that is totally fine. All right, so first question that we're going to start with is, should you get a creative writing degree? Yes or no? Well, I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons of getting a creative writing degree. So, the pros of getting a creative writing degree. Exploration. One of the things that is required for your creative writing degree is that you explore different other genres of writing, which means that you might find a genre that you prefer more than another genre. And by genre, I don't even mean just fiction, mystery, etc. One of the pros of creative writing in college is that they require you to take an Intro to Creative Writing course, which requires you to have a poetry section, a screenwriting section, and a fiction writing section, both short and long, which means that you get to try all of the things. So in that regard, it's great because it means that you get to experiment and see if maybe, you thought this was your passion, but then something else is. There was one girl I know who started out saying, yeah, I want to write a novel, and by the end of the class, she was like, I'm a poetry gal through and through, and I don't think novels are going to work for me. And that's part of one of the benefits, is that you get to learn more about yourself, more about different writing styles. The poetry section was in some ways one of my favorite sections of that creative writing course because of the fact that we learned about other types of poems that I didn't even know existed. And some of those poem types, I was like, dang, I like that. Why didn't we learn about this? in all my other classes, because I had a lot of creative writing classes, but until college, there was a lot of gaps that I didn't even know existed. They were great creative writing classes in high school, but they just go a lot more in depth in college. That being said, one of the cons of this is that if you have one specific project, you can't work on just that project. You have to explore. They require the exploration. So even if you're like, I hate poetry with all my guts, you have to do poetry. So in that regard, it's kind of frustrating for some people. I know some of my friends who took it were like, ugh, I really don't like nonfiction, because they also had you try nonfiction, but you have to do a nonfiction assignment. Or I know that one of my other friends was like, I really just want to finish my novel, but generally they don't let you do that until you pick a novel class in specific. So as a result, all the other creative writing classes before them, they're just like, so have you worked on your poetry? No, but I wrote 4 pages in my novel. Don't care. Did you have your poem? So in that regard, it's a little tricky because the exploration is pushed so hard that if you have something else you want to work on, that's kind of put on the back burner a little bit. Another thing that I would say as a pro, though, is practice. You get a ton of practice if you get a creative writing degree because of the fact that you are practicing all different kinds of writing. Essay writing, nonfiction writing, poetry, screenplays, playwriting versus cinematic writing, the list goes on and on. So as a result, you get a ton of practice writing, which, I'll be honest, the best thing you can do for writing, sure, learning from lessons is great. Getting feedback from editors and other people is great. The best thing you can do, though, is practice. Practice is honestly key. I have had lots of people, including in this writers club, that started out one way, and after 2 years of practicing their craft have become even better than they were in the beginning. So there's always room for improvement, even amongst professionals. There was a book I was reading the other day that I was astounded by the amount of progress the writer had made from one series to the next, and they're a best-selling author. So even if you're a best-selling, amazing author, there's still always room to grow with practice. So having a ton of practice, good. The one con, lots of essays. Most schools don't really count creative writing as a real degree. As a result, even though it counts as a degree, they count it as an English with a creative writing emphasis degree for most places, which means that most of it is English, which means a lot of it is essays. I have written more essays than I care to count in my creative writing degree. The one benefit of that is that you get really good at writing to a specific standard, which is good if you are going to publish traditionally, because writing query letters to a specific standard, writing according to certain standards of work and seeing what people want is also something that is good for publishing and whatnot. So in that regard, it's good. But if you're not going to be writing essays for the rest of your life, that bit is not my favorite, I will admit. If you're not leaning towards writing essays in scientific journals, you might be a little sad at the amount of essays you have to write. I would say the other benefit of it, though, is learning the other styles. Now, I already kind of mentioned this with exploration, but the benefit of it, even if you hate poetry or hate nonfiction with all of your guts, learning a different style of writing is actually really beneficial. Why? Because you can blend it into your own writing no matter what it is. For example, with poetry, one of the things I love about poetry is the melodicness of the words, and so I have intertwined that into my regular fiction writing. Whereas there are other people, I know one of my other friends wrote a nonfiction piece. She hated writing nonfiction, but the one thing she got out of the nonfiction was writing what's called a braid. Now, a braided narrative is when you take three perspectives and you interweave them. And even though it's more common in nonfiction, it can be used in fiction to great effect. And she didn't even know this was a style until she tried nonfiction. So in that regard, trying all these different styles are beneficial. Another con that I would probably mention is jobs. Now, do we all want to be a writer full time? 100%, and I'm not saying you can't, but most writers start with a different job and work their way up. The reason why is because of the fact that it is hard to get traction even as a traditionally published author. Even with traditionally published books, I have several people who are like, hey, I'm barely surviving on my writer's check nights, and as a result, I have to work 2 jobs. My writing job is my second job, and then I have a day job, kind of an idea. Kind of like me with my editing. Editing's great, it pays pretty decently, but I don't have a consistent enough clientele in order to do it all the time. As a result of that, I work here too. Granted, not complaining. I love working at the library. It is my first job, and I have loved it ever since. But long story short, the pros and the cons are that you generally end up having 2 jobs. Writing books, and then whatever your other job is. If you get a creative writing degree, most people will probably want you to phrase it on your resume as an English degree, because English degree looks fancy. Creative writing degree says, I want to go write novels, but I'm here, I guess, because I have to. So a lot of job applications won't necessarily like that, unless they specifically say they want a creative writer. Now, some people do. There's not a lot of jobs out there for creative writers, but there are some. Video game writers, ghost writers, let's see what else, script writers. So there are ways to get a job as a creative writer that aren't just publishing books. But I will admit it is a lot easier to get a job with an English degree than it is with a creative writing degree. That being said, if you ever want to get a different degree maybe, and then just focus on learning more techniques through YouTube videos and writing conferences, that is another great way to go. That is honestly cheaper than going to college. If you wanted to get a different degree, I would say get something in a similar field, so that way you're at least in the similar genre. Like with me as an editor, it's a similar field, maybe not the same. Or go with something entirely different. I know lots of people who are like, hey, I'm into chemistry, but one day I'll write my novel. And as long as you make time for your novel, I would say finding a different job until you get that novel published is by no means bad. I think that's actually a really good thing to do because it is going to help you be able to write your novel and not have to stress about money and financial issues. All right. So, next thing we're going to talk about is publication. So, a lot of people say, oh, get a creative writing degree because it will help you get published. Yes and no. I would say yes, because it will show the publisher that you are willing to put the work in to your novel and that you are experienced, especially in a query letter. However, I will say that it doesn't always sway people. I've worked for a publishing agency for about a year, and during that time, we looked more at the quality of the writing than we did it whether or not they had a creative writing degree listed in their query letter. If they had one listed in their query letter and their writing was good, then we generally took that as a good sign that the rest of their writing would be good. Because some people polish up their first 10 pages real nice, but then the rest is terrible. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a reason that we have editors, and that is because everyone needs one. I need one, and I am one. So, honestly, you always need a second pair of eyes on your work. And it's not because it's bad, it's just because everyone needs a good polish. I like to look at it like diamonds. Diamonds are beautiful in their raw form, but after a jeweler's gotten done trimming it and polishing it up, it's even more beautiful. And that's the same thing with writing. It's not that it was bad before, it just, the polish brings out every best part of it. That being said, back to publication. If you have a creative writing degree, it will possibly increase your chances. It depends on what company you're going through. Some companies don't really care. Other companies care a ton. So honestly, it depends on where you're going. I would say bigger publishing houses are going to care more about if you have a creative writing degree, just because of the fact that they can't accept everyone. And so they see having that on your resume as like a, oh, hey, maybe they're better than the rest kind of idea. Whereas other publishing houses are like, they have a creative writing degree. We'll see how good their writing actually is. Kind of like where mine was. They liked to see it, but it wasn't necessarily like the end all be all. I will say, so there are benefits to it. I would say with publication, the best thing you can do is get that first chapter really well polished, because irregardless of if you have a creative writing degree or not, what they're looking for is good writing. And good writing can come from learning through YouTube videos, having a really good editing circle, having good beta readers, having a really, worked through your thing and self-edited it. Honestly, good writing can come from anywhere. You don't necessarily need a degree to write well. One thing that I will say increases your chances of publication with getting a creative writing degree is they teach you a lot of good techniques about how to get published, traditionally that is. And they'll talk with you about, hey, here are things you might want to look out for, here are things you might want to watch. I will say that the one not so great thing is when you give it to your peers. Sometimes you won't always get great advice from your peers, but that's okay. You don't have to take their advice. That is one thing that I will say. Take everyone's advice with a grain of salt. Assume that they may or may not know what they're talking about. But generally they'll help make sure that you have a finished product by the end. For example, the poetry department, especially at UVU, that's where I went, or am going. I'm finishing up this spring, so almost past tense. The poetry program makes sure that you have a certain amount of poems put together in a portfolio, so that way when you leave you can try to publish those poems. The nonfiction program does the same thing. The screenwriting program makes sure you have a finished play by the end that you can try to get published. And the fiction writing program makes sure you have a novella, not a novel, but a novella that you can try to get published by the end. So the benefits of this is that you are on a deadline and that they are expecting that amount from you, which will help you get your writing done faster. I will admit that having deadlines does help a lot. So in that regard, will it help increase your publication chances because you have something done and finished that you can start submitting? Absolutely. But will it guarantee? Not so much. All right. Now, we're going to move on to how to improve your writing without a degree. So if you've decided, hey, creative writing degree doesn't sound for me, but I still want to improve my writing, or hey, you know what, I don't want to be a writer full-time, I just want to write on the side, because some people do like doing that. So you don't want to get a creative writing degree, you want to get a degree in, I don't know, chemistry, something else. That's totally fine. There are definitely ways to improve your writing without getting a creative writing degree, 100%. One of them is finding writers clubs like this, where you can talk to your peers about your writing, where you can talk to me about your writing, especially with this writers club, because I'm a professional editor, that does give you a little bit of a leg up, because I will give you feedback that most people probably don't give you. But that being said, even if you didn't have this writers club, what are other ways you could learn without a degree? YouTube has a million resources. They have classes from Brandon Sanderson. They have classes from Dan Wells. They have podcasts about writing from both of them. They have famous authors in every genre pretty much that either have some sort of YouTube video or recorded lessons from other places. They have, honestly, limitless resources. Hello! With regards to that. Hello!
What's up, fellow nerds? Or just the one.
So, ways that you can move forward without a degree. Other ways that you can move forward without a degree, writing conferences. Now, to be said, not all writing conferences are created equal, but, and some are more expensive than others. I will say LTUE is definitely a good one, especially because of the fact that they give discounts for people who are your age. So, yay!
10 out of 10, definitely recommend. So good. This year should be massive.
It should be insane. I'm really excited. But yes, if you haven't heard of LTUE, it's Life, the Universe, and Everything. I believe the tickets are still on sale until the end of January. I could be wrong though. And those tickets will still be on sale even until the day of, but they will be on a discounted sale until the end of January. Is that correct?
Probably.
I think that's correct.
Idea.
I'm not certain on that, but I'm pretty sure they're still discounted until the end of January.
I don't think so.
But if you don't want to get a creative writing degree, that does not mean that, oh no, you're now going to fail and it's bad. There's so many different things you can do. One of my favorite things is podcasts from various best-selling authors. Marissa Meyer, the author of Cinder, does one. Yes, she's fantastic. Brandon Sanderson also does one, which is the I love their metaphor. Yeah, the metaphor motto, where it's writing excuses 15 minutes long because you're in a hurry and we're not that smart. And I love it because they're downplaying themselves despite the fact that they are multiple selling authors.
Geniuses.
Yeah, they're great. But anyway, I will say some of their stuff gets a little iffy, but that's only because they're adults, and so every once in a while they'll mention some PG-13-ish topics, but like overall I would say it's pretty clean. Most of it's PG.
Now, so I haven't listened to it.
Every once in a while they'll have an episode where they're like, oh yeah, let's talk about violence in stories, and you're like, okay. But then there are other ones where they're like, let's talk about romance, and it's nice and fluffy. So you never know with them really. But there are just so many amazing resources out there aside from getting a creative writing degree. Like I said, are there benefits? Absolutely. Are there drawbacks? Also absolutely. Just like with anything good in this world, there will always be drawbacks. Nothing is perfect. Do you guys have any questions about getting a creative writing degree, resources without a creative writing degree, what I would recommend, or what things you would like, or unrelated questions about writing? Because that lesson was a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be because I talked really, really, really fast. So, any questions regarding getting a creative writing degree, not getting a creative writing degree? Life, the Universe, and Everything is in Utah if you're interested, viewers.
Suggested colleges for getting degrees.
Suggested colleges, that is a great question. It depends on what you're looking for, honestly. Some colleges actually have best-selling authors as their creative writing teachers. So if you're looking for a specific author to teach you, I would look up which author teaches at which university. For example, I believe Brandon Sanderson might be, but I'm not certain, still teaching creative writing course at BYU.
You seriously. I didn't know you was a Brandon Sanderson fan.
Anyway, that being said,
But we're not doing anything.
you can
Yeah.
still have a great experience learning creative writing, even if they don't have best-selling authors. For example, I went to UVU. Were any of them best-selling authors? No. Were they great teachers? Yes, for the most part. I will say some professors were better than others, but that's with everything. That being said, I would say pick the college that you feel resonates best with you, because you won't just be taking creative writing classes. That is the one unfortunate thing about a creative writing degree, is that you still have to get your associates, you still have to take a whole buttload of classes that'll be essay writing and have to deal with it. And it's not exactly the most fun thing in the universe. So I would say pick a college that you feel comfortable at and that you feel at home at,
BYU?
more than anything else.
What have I known since I was like 10 that I'm going to BYU? Like,
But that being said, do you guys have any other questions about creative writing degree or not getting a creative writing degree? Because I am all for trade colleges and free education on the internet. That was lame, but but yeah, I'm all for YouTube videos on the internet. Honestly, you can learn just as much from a YouTube video on the internet as you can in creative writing classes in college. I actually probably have learned more about creative writing on the internet than I have at college. But that's mainly because of the fact that college specifies a quote unquote well-rounded degree. They don't specify in, hey, you're doing this X thing, congratulations, let's just focus on that thing. They want you to be well-rounded in society, and all the quotation marks because I hate it. And yeah, nothing's wrong with having a well-rounded education. It's just, it can be frustrating because you're learning a lot of things that may not actually be beneficial to you when you could be learning more about what is beneficial to you. I don't know where the garbage can is. It seems to have vanished.
Is hiding from.
I honestly don't see it. Oh, it's behind me.
Why is it there? That's so.
I have no idea why it is over here.
Eat trash.
I'm gonna go get a drink for it.
That sounds good. Do you guys have any other questions about getting a creative writing degree, not getting a creative writing degree, or unrelated, something random about writing? I will specify about writing. Don't ask me about your dog.
What is the answer to life? Actually, I already know. It's 40.
Yes, Michael.
Okay, so if you don't go for like a creative writing degree,
Mm-hmm.
then actually no. Would you suggest that I get a creative writing degree?
Yes or no? That is a great question. I would say, if you want a full comprehensive thing, I would say go back to the beginning of this video when I post it, because it does have a lot of good information on that. But I would say, honestly, not everyone is able to start as a full-time writer out of the gate. Unfortunately, it's just not that way. Brandon Sanderson didn't start that way. Dan Wells didn't start that way. Jennifer A. Nielsen didn't start that way. I can name 1,000 other bestseller names that didn't start that way.
Wait, what was it? We did. I'm not sure if you were there, but there was this like RPG thing that Dan Wells did. I think it was like 2 years ago.
He's
so
great.
you probably weren't there.
He's lots of fun.
But he headed it with a bunch of other like panelists, and it was so.
He's
freaking
great.
Fun.
But yeah, so that being said, long story short, I would recommend getting a degree in something you're interested in as a secondary job. even if you plan to be a best-selling writer one day and that is your goal in life and you want to just write to your heart's content, you will not start there. No one does. I think the funniest thing that Brandon Sanderson ever said on his podcast was the fact that he started out as a night clerk at a hotel. So like you're sitting there going, oh yes, he's always been a bestseller. No, he wasn't. He started out as a night clerk at a hotel. So
That is actually amazing.
Right? So honestly, everyone starts with a different job and then ends up becoming a writer. So I would say if you're not going to go for the creative writing degree, pick something that you would be okay with being your job until you become a full-time writer.
That's like every job for me. I will take any job as an employee.
I will do all the things. Yes. With the creative writing degree, though, I will say if you are interested in a job that involves English, go for a creative writing degree, because then you not only have the creative writing degree, you have the practice, but then you also are able to get your English degree, because most people just call it English with creative writing emphasis, because they don't want to admit it's just creative writing degree. That being said, if you're interested in anything that is English related, for example, English teaching, any sort of librarian services, editing, all those different kinds of things.
Why don't I just come back and work?
With an English degree, there's a ton you can do, honestly. The possibilities are almost limitless. So I would say if you're interested in English, get the creative writing degree. If you're not interested in English as a full-time career before becoming an author, then I'd say don't do it. Just because there are ways, like I said earlier, to benefit yourself and become a better creative writing person without the degree. So long story short, if you like English, yes, get a creative writing degree. If you don't like English, don't do that. Bad idea. Get some other degree that you're actually interested in, and then learn more about creative writing through writers clubs and etc. I will always be here, and y'all are my friends at this point. Y'all have been here so long. So like, so honestly, feel free to just be like, hey, guess what? I need some help, and I can be like, what can I do for you? Speaking of which, if I'm taking forever, I plan to work on all those things today, since I have had a lot of you send me stuff that I haven't worked on for almost a month, and I apologize. I've been really hecking out of it.
Take your time.
Thanks.
I don't have anything.
But that being said, are there any other questions about creative writing degrees or writing in general? Adjust the pen. If not, then we can just stop and talk about your regular writing if you'd like. Does that sound good to everyone?